Nvidia just said, well, they didn't say it, but based on their actions said it, that their stock is too cheap. We'll get into the proof as we go into the video, as well as to see if Nvidia stock is a buy or sell. So get your popcorn ready because this is going to be an interesting video. Recently, I made a poll asking you guys what other topics other than Tesla. If you guys have been watching me for some time, you know I pretty much talk about Tesla because I am all into Tesla stock. But other things you guys want me to talk about, well, Nvidia won that poll, but the comment section was pretty darn interesting and diverse, and I loved it. I am definitely going to be sharing analysis of other stocks. I mean, there's some stocks out there that they're under radar, and in the next 5-6 years, we can see them 5-10xing within a year, just like how Tesla did. And I can see some of these stocks already. And yes, I'll be doing those videos shortly because I'm curious and I like to exploit my curiosity. But in the meantime, you'll see a lot of Tesla videos on the way because I just love talking about Tesla. You guys love hearing about Tesla. So why stop? So expect a lot more Tesla content coming your way. Now, I've always said that Nvidia is like the Tesla in its industry. So you guys are interested, you guys want to see what the stock price could be, and if it's a buy or sell, let's get down to it. Just make sure, man, that this is not a fact. It's only a prediction and a prediction alone. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a guy on YouTube who's going all into Tesla stock because I think it's the greatest opportunity in our lifetime. And so take everything I say with a grain of salt. All right, you guys are ready? Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, man. Let's go. So in order to find out if Nvidia stock is a buy or sell now, we gotta look in the future, 2030, because if you guys been watching me, I don't believe in quick rich schemes or get rich quick kind of thing. Investing is a long-term thing, a decade, 2 decades. The longer you hold, the more wealthy you're gonna get. Welcome to investing, whether it's property, stocks, crypto, precious metals. They all say the same story. All you gotta do is go to their charts and look 10 years to 20 years back and you'll see exactly that. And if you guys have been watching me for some time, this chart is a very, very simple way to dictate that, and we're gonna find out together. Smash that like button, let's get down to it. So in 2021 and 2022, we already have the total revenue and the net income, and as you can see, it's like a 60% increase for total revenue and a double from 2021 to 2022. Now, I do have to say this, I do have to mention this because the way how Nvidia reports their earnings, their end year is October, not December. So there is a lag here in a quarter than we are used to. So keep that in mind. Nonetheless, with that, we had 121 bucks per share in 2021. And in 2022, it pretty much almost doubled to 226 bucks per share. Like, that's absolutely insane. Right now, Nvidia is around 220 at the recording of this video. So sheesh, it hasn't, gone down as far if you look at then till now. Obviously, Nvidia stock went down below as 150, I think even below then as well. Now it rocketed back up to above 200 bucks per share. So that's flipping amazing. But we need to find out what 2023 all the way to 2030 is going to be, and the best place to find this out was simply Wall Street's. They have one of the best predictions when it comes to, projecting growth and sales in the future, and they're conservative, which I like. So I took their numbers from 2024 to 2025, and I plugged them in here from 2023 to 2025, my mistake. And as you guys can see, they're saying 2023 is gonna dip in net income, but it's also going to increase in total revenue, most likely because a lot of people are not indoors anymore, so they're not stuck playing games anymore. They're going out and being about, as well as the geopolitical issue with China when the US banned all US chip makers, pretty much any chip maker, advanced chip makers, to be sent to China. And Nvidia is a chip maker, and yeah, it's gonna hurt them bad. So I think that's why they put 2023 is going to be they're gonna take a hit. And 2024, it bounced back, 36 billion total revenue and over 10 billion net income. And 2025, reaching almost 40 billion in total revenue, but also going back down again to 9.4 billion dollars in net income, which is pretty interesting. Now we gotta figure out 2026 to 2030, and obviously nobody on the internet has a prediction all the way to 2030 because it's way too far away. Even projecting for 4 or 5 years is extremely far. A lot of analysis go based off 1 year, 2 years. But we are different. We are curious. We are a different breed. We are the Tesla breed where we look 10, 20 years in the future, and we're gonna do the same thing here with Nvidia. So very straightforward and simple. I got 2021 sales and profits, and I took 2024 sales and profits and everything in between, and see how they were growing year per year. For sales and revenue, as you can see, it's been declining, but year over year, it's a 31% growth. And for profits, it's also declining in a way, but a 47% year-over-year growth. So that's pretty darn interesting. Now in this chart, I added 2025 here as well because we do have that info too. So when we put that in and we get the average for the revenue, we get about 25%. For earnings here, we have about 32% on the average. And again, simply Wall Street is saying about 22, 23%, which is again pretty interesting. I don't know why they're not seeing the growth, maybe because of all the geopolitical issues and all the bans going around that US is doing against China. It does have a big impact. So I think that's why they're being more conservative and reducing it down to 22, 23%. But nonetheless, this is what I said for total revenue and net income. So for total revenue first, for 2026, I said they're going to grow 27%. And we get $49 billion. In 2027, I said 25% growth to $61 billion. 2028 growth at 20%. And we get $73 billion. 2029 and 2030 at 15% growth, which finish off the decade reaching $97 billion. For net income, in 2026, I said 32%. Mind you guys, Nvidia they do have high margins. So the profit margins are pretty high. But 32% here, we get over $12 billion. In 2027, I said 28% growth from that, and that's almost $16 billion. 2028, 25%, $20 billion. 2029 and 2030, 20% growth, which we get almost $30 billion in net income by 2030. So, sheesh, that's crazy. From 7.6 to almost 29 billion, that's almost a fourfold. That's actually pretty darn nice. And I think they're being pretty darn conservative here because Nvidia is in the automotive industry, but in the FSD. We'll get to that in a second, but that's a big market and we'll get to that in a bit. Now, shares outstanding is very interesting because it could tell you a few things about the company. It can tell you, well, quite a bit of things it can tell you, but one of the things it can tell you, and the most important thing in my opinion, is if the stock is cheap or not. Here's how you know if it's cheap: if they're doing a buyback. And if we look at the chart, Y charts, and even look at Nvidia themselves, they're saying from now until December 2023, they have a $15 billion buyback plan. They started to buy back the stock back in March, which the stock price was around $270. But look at this, guys. They started to buy a whole lot heavier and more aggressive when the stock hit an all-time low in October of around $112 per share. This is how you know that even Nvidia knows that their own stock is cheap, and they bought a lot. And you can see the chart here. Look at that massive dip. That massive dip is shares outstanding going down. That's absolutely insane, and that was because of Nvidia buying back shares. That's crazy. And here's another angle of them buying about $3.5 billion worth of shares. They bought back, and it was at the peak where the stock was down, which is crazy. And that's how you know, folks, that Nvidia stock, Nvidia is saying that their stock is even cheap, that they had to buy a whole lot more at pretty much the lowest part. Like, that's crazy. And so for 2023, I put 2.4 billion in shares outstanding. And they're going to continue doing buybacks in 2023. Most likely it'll go down below 2.3 billion. But I put here 2.4 just to stay conservative. Now, from 2024 to 2030, I said they're going to dilute 0.5%. I know at this point that they may continue to do buybacks as we go forward because, you know, Nvidia is a cash machine. They're making quite a bit of money. But to be conservative, 0.5% dilution from 2024 all the way to 2030. And we get 2.5 billion in shares outstanding, pretty much back where 2021, which most likely by 2030 it'll be below 2 billion if they continue buying back shares. That's insane. But that's how you guys know that Nvidia stock is pretty darn cheap, that they themselves are buying back at low crazy prices, even at these prices. But anyways, do I think it's cheap? That's a whole different story. Let's keep going forward. And as you guys know, EPS follows the shares outstanding, and by 2030 we get $11.5 EPS, which is absolutely insane. Now it's time to find the stock price. If you guys are ready, smash that like button because finding the PE is pretty darn interesting for Nvidia because it's a massive growth stock. First of all, why isn't that like button smashed, man? Like, dude, come on, what are you doing? All right, let's get down to it. Because we have a price decrease in net income, I put a PE of 75. Now, I know what you're saying, that wait a minute, they're losing earnings, but you're increasing EP? Well, yeah, that's how it kind of works. I mean, look at Amazon. They missed earnings the entire year. They went from like a 40 PE to 100 PE because the PE keeps getting decompressed when they keep missing, earnings. Same thing happens with Nvidia, which is a 75 PE in my opinion, and that's a stock price of $238 per share and a market cap of $572 billion. Now in 2024, they did a record of $10.2 billion in net income. PE gets compressed, and I'm gonna say 60 PE because again, Nvidia is a growth stock, and by 2024 we are going to be in a bull market. So a 60 PE, I think, is conservative for Nvidia in a bull market. But with that, we get a stock price of $255 per share and a market cap over $600 billion. Most likely in a bull market, 65 PE to 70 PE sounds more like it, to close to $300 per share, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. 60 PE. In 2025, again, they go back down in their earnings. That means PE will get decompressed again. And I'm going to put 70 PE here. And we get a stock price of $271 per share and a market cap over $650 billion. In 2026, they did a record of $12.4 billion. PE gets compressed to 60. Again, I'm still thinking we're in a bull market in 2026. We get a stock price of $305 per share, hitting a market cap of $744 billion. 2027, almost $16 billion in net income. PE gets compressed to 55. We get a stock price of $357 per share and a market cap almost reaching $900 billion. In 2028, almost $20 billion in net income. PE gets compressed to a 50, and we get a stock price over $400 per share and a market cap almost reaching $1 trillion. So that's pretty darn nice. But in 2029, we get another record with a PE of 45 getting compressed again with a stock price of $433 per share and a market cap over $1 trillion. And in 2030, a PE of 40, and we get a stock price of 460 and a market cap over $1.1 trillion. So sheesh, that's flipping crazy. Like 460 2030, and right now we're at 220, you could say. 2xing your money by 2030, in my opinion, is pretty darn conservative for Nvidia. Now, my concern here is nothing to do with Nvidia, but it has to do with China. Again, the year that they said they're going to invade Taiwan, 2027, that's going to affect everything and everybody, man. I don't know what the numbers are going to be in 2027 if that happens, or 2028 when that happens, but it's definitely not going to be this. Most likely we'll probably see the stock price go down to maybe $200 per share in 2027 if there's an invasion, because that's going to disrupt a lot of things. Or maybe not. Maybe the US government will look at Nvidia and other chip makers in the US and say, hey, here's a whole bunch of money, make these advanced chips for our fighter jets, and that'll boost it up even higher. I don't flipping know. A lot of people look at me and say, this is extremely bearish. It should be at least $2 trillion. And in my previous Nvidia prediction, I did say by 2030, we're going to go above $2 trillion. But we didn't have any of these rules that would restrict chips to China and other things that's affecting Nvidia at the moment. Unexpected headwinds, you could say. Here's the chart so you guys can take a look at, as you guys can see, from like 226 to, I guess it's 220 now. But it goes up nice and gradually if it stays like this. Again, this is not facts, only a prediction, and a prediction alone. Take all this with a grain of salt. Now, in my opinion, guys, by 2030, 100 billion in revenue and a net income of 30 billion is not bad, but I think it's low for Nvidia, and I'm going to tell you why. You see, Nvidia is in the FSD space. They are helping other car companies compete with Tesla with their full self-driving. Now, obviously, Tesla is like light years away compared to everybody else, but Nvidia, they could have a shot in bringing autonomy to vehicles. And if they don't want to use Tesla's or license Tesla's FSD, Nvidia will be a good spot for them to license out to other car companies. And according to ARK, she's saying that by 2030, the autonomous ride haul is going to be worth $28 trillion. So if Nvidia can capture, let's say, 5% of that, that's automatically a 1.4 trillion valuation for Nvidia. And we can see what it will be by 2030 here in my prediction of $1.1 trillion. So that's crazy. But again, ARK, she goes way over the moon sometimes with her numbers. Very encouraging numbers, I'm not gonna lie. But autonomous driving, autonomous or FSD, we're still a few years away, and we have to see how it's going to play out in politics and, being regulated and approved. That's a whole headache on its own. And I'm kind of glad that Nvidia is on top of this, because this is a massive opportunity for Nvidia itself. So overall, you could say that at upwards of almost 3 trillion by 2030, Nvidia could be worth by then if you include ARK's valuation of FSD of 28 trillion. But if we remove that and just look what the business is doing right now and just trying to scale that, that's over $1.1 billion. Trillion dollars, $1.1 trillion to the trillionaire club. Bravo, Nvidia. But that's nonetheless, we all can agree that Nvidia one day is gonna be worth $1 trillion. It's already halfway there. So really, it's just a matter of when and not if. Now, do I think Nvidia stock is cheap enough for me to buy? Well, in my opinion, it was cheap to buy when it went below 200 bucks, even 150. I mean, low as 112. Are you kidding me? For Nvidia, that's insanely cheap. I mean, even Nvidia bought shares themselves because it was so flippin' cheap. But around 200 bucks, I do believe, because we do see some dipping coming down for Nvidia. We're in a recession. We have chip bans to China, as US has the rules, made that law that you can't really sell chips to China, and that's going to affect Nvidia big time. But nonetheless, if you ask me if Nvidia is a great long-term hold, I'm going to say, in my opinion, Nvidia stock is a buy if you're holding from now to 2030. But if you're holding for the next couple of years, I don't think buying will be a good idea. This is a long-term bet. This is a long-term investment. And as we can see, Nvidia could become $1 trillion company by 2028, 2029. Now, do I think it's a sell? I don't think Nvidia is a sell. I think they're going to do great long-term. And again, it's a great long-term hold. It's a great buy and hold and buying the dip. If you'd bought the dip year till now, you would have almost 2x'd your money, man, which is absolutely flippin' insane. Now, do I have any Nvidia shares? I do not. You guys know I'm pretty much going all into Tesla stock. Well, at least 99% of my stock portfolio is Tesla stock. And if you guys want to see how Tesla is going to perform in Q1 of 2023, check out this video first. We guess what the production and deliveries are, and then check out this video next, where we try to figure out what the stock price could be based on these numbers. Check these two videos out. You won't be disappointed. And thanks so much for viewing this video. Support the channel by becoming a channel member or getting some merch. Go all in merch or poster. And subscribe if you haven't already, man. I shall see you guys in the next video. See ya.